IMSA was enthusiastic, I would say, about bringing some diversity to the grid. Because as I've said in other interviews, this was never meant to be a spec series. This isn't spec Miata. This wasn't supposed to be spec Orica. But that's what it is until this year. It's spec Orica. We all run the same motor. We all run the same tires. They all run the same gearbox. You know, it sort of, you know, the spirit originally was there was 4 manufacturers. One left really quickly, a second faded away, and now they're down to 1. And us. So.
Coverage today is brought to you by the members of the DL 500 Club. For just $10 a month, you get exclusive content and send me to all the races. How cool was that quote from Creech Motorsport co-owner and driver Lance Willsey, talking about the openness of IMSA to accept new technical regulations and alliances and new cars, and that just refreshed me. It just did something for my heart that made me feel good. And if you liked that quote like I did, I think you're really going to like the feature that I put together later on in this video on the Creech Motorsports team and their Ligier, because yeah, I think a lot of people have been negative Nancy's about the idea of doing something different, and I want to buck that narrative, because for me, you know, I grew up in racing when there were multiple chassis, multiple engines, multiple tires, and I think we should celebrate that. Celebrate a team and a manufacturer willing to go a different way rather than poo-poo it and immediately knock it down. I think it's a really interesting story, and it's a great way to kick off our coverage of this year's 12 Hours of Sebring. There's a lot more to go over than just one team running a goofy, different chassis, right? Let's look at the results of the first 3 practices of today, which was the majority of the running for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship on this Thursday. And so the results of practice 1, fastest in GTP and overall, is the 01 Cadillac Racing prototype run by Chip Ganassi Racing. The drivers aboard are Sebastian Bourdais, Renger van de Zande, and Scott Dixon. LMP2 for practice 1 was the number 11 TDS Racing Orica with Mikkel Jensen, Hunter McElrea, and Thomas in that car. GTD Pro, pretty good day for GTD Lexuses today. The 14 Vassar Sullivan, Lexus of Hawksworth, Barnecote, and Kyle Kirkwood topping the charts. And then in GTD, it's the 12 Vassar Sullivan with Frankie Montecalvo, Parker Thompson, and Aaron Tielitz. Practice 2 saw the Cadillacs knocked off of the top of the time charts by the number 85 JDC Miller Porsche 963. In LMP2, it was the Riley Orica of Gar Robinson, Felipe Fraga, and Jeff Burton. And then in GTD Pro, GTD, it's the Vassar Sullivan duo. However, the GTD car was actually fastest overall in GTD. So it's a little bit unfortunate because this year it's not a Super Sebring. The World Endurance Championship opened their season 2 weeks ago in Qatar rather than open it here with IMSA. And while the greatest ticket in motorsports, in my opinion, is no longer in existence, at least for this year, there might be something happening at COTA next year. I don't know if you believe the rumor mill or not, but at least for this year, IMSA and the World Endurance Championship are not together. But that's not to say that this event does not have a international flavor of a huge magnitude. In fact, if you look at this chart here, we've actually got the identical class structure to Le Mans outside of the fact that there is a Pro GT class. Of course, GTP is the equivalent in Europe to Hypercar. LMP2, while not a part of the World Endurance Championship as a whole, will be joining the World Endurance Championship at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And also, GT3-based cars, for the first time, will be joining the World Endurance Championship. Their first race, of course, was in Dubai a couple of weeks ago. It will be their first 24 Hours of Le Mans as well. Of course, GT3 cars have been around in IMSA essentially since 2012, so not much new there. But the story, I think, is in LMP2. So on the subject of global sports car racing, I think it's really important to talk about the P2 category in depth, because with the World Endurance Championship dropping P2 for this year, essentially IMSA P2 has become the top P2 division in the world. Now the thing about P2 is that in recent years, while there are 4 chassis makes allowed in LMP2, by and large it has become a spec class. All of the teams using the Orica chassis, like you see behind me, run here by United. They've sold over 100 chassis as of 2022, thanks to dailysportscar.com for that stat. But things have changed in 2024, and one of the things I really appreciate and want to shine more of a light on are teams that decide to do something different, to choose to be different. Because back in the day, you know, sports car racing and really the larger racing world was about doing the opposite of what the other guys are doing. And I think this is an amazing story. Creech Motorsports has brought a Ligier P2 car for the entire IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season. And I wanted to give them the credit that they deserve and the spotlight that they deserve for being different. I think it's a great story.
My dad was big into motorsports. Our idea of the family vacation was to go to the Indy 500, go to the Michigan 500, etc. Once IMSA made the decision, which makes perfect sense, to move P3 out of WeatherTech, you know, as a team, we had to make a decision. You know, what do we do? You know, I had to make a decision. Do I keep racing? Is this, you know, is there a message here to go do something else? And, you know, I wasn't quite ready to give it up. So then I said, okay, so then what do we do? Do we go back to GT3 or do we move to P2? I really wasn't interested. You know, I love driving a GT car. I still own several. But the uncertainties of the BOP and what that can bring, and again, I think IMSA does an amazing job given the challenges that they have. But as a car owner and a driver, the uncertainties there were more than I wanted to try to manage and deal with going into a season and then during a season. So that left us with the option of P2, and I enjoyed the prototype car quite a bit. And then the question was, you know, we have realistically two chassis to choose from, and realistically one, because nobody anywhere in the world was driving the Ligier chassis. There's a bit of a sentimental thing too, because as a kid growing up, I remember seeing Ligiers on the F1 grid with the Jeton, or however you pronounce it, cigarette brand on it. And I mean, that's my childhood, and you know, went to a lot of F1 races and saw that chassis. In 2023-24, with this generation Michelin tire, and with the Joker updates, can we figure this out?
So it was fantastic news when they called and said, hey, would you like to do this adventure together? It wasn't an easy program to put together. Because of car availability, we had to do something a little bit different.
So we have a gentleman who's worked with us and been an immense help on the P3 side, who's out of Europe and had experience in running a 217 chassis a number of years ago. He knew where multiple of the P2 chassis were. So he was kind enough to set out and, you know, put in a lot of legwork, make a lot of phone calls, go inspect and look at a number of different chassis that were out there. The second complicating factor was once we made sort of the philosophical decision, okay, we're going to go forward with the 217, Ligier could have built us, you know, a chassis from the ground up. It's not like they have a showroom with 217 sitting in it, you know, fully built, dressed, ready to roll out. So it would have involved, you know, starting from scratch, building, you know, a car from the ground up, and the time frame to do that was quite lengthy, vis-a-vis when we wanted to start testing. And so the path of least resistance was to get the best used car that we could find and start aggregating as many good spares, because again, Ligier didn't have a warehouse full of uprights, axles, transmission harnesses, you know, again, because nobody'd driven these cars in years. So we bought a car. It came with an engine that's of no value to us because it's the original 600 horsepower unrestricted engine. So, you know, we can't really use that for any purpose other than it looks great in the shop. But, you know, Gibson was a significant help in getting us an engine as quickly as humanly possible to enable us to get testing.
Luckily with this team, they know how to prep a car for these races better than anybody in the paddock. I mean, they really do a fantastic job. If you walk around, you'd have no idea it was a used car when it arrived at their shop.
So the car was essentially taken down to a bare tub. Thankfully, the tub was perfect, rebuilt up, and you know that led us to be able to do our first rollout, which was done here in November. To help us understand the car, we brought Olivier Plat over from France, who raced this car, you know, in anger in the day, knows the car well. played a very significant role in the development of this car with and for Ligier. So, you know, Ollie was kind enough to come over for a couple days, spent 2 days with us, giving us his feedback on the car, helped us get directionally going the right way. And Ligier's been a huge asset, you know, everything from the engineering side to, you know, helping us in the ways they can with parts, equipment, historical setup info. But again, we're on a very different, you know, a different tire manufacturer and a different compound.
The nice thing is we're on a Michelin tire here, and our experience with this car on the Michelin tire in Europe was fantastic. We had great teams that ran on that tire before, and they did quite well. So we just want to build on that and keep progressing.
Ligier also has another car here this weekend for the first time, the Lamborghini. So how much of that car being here helps you guys? Is there much crossover between those two chassis? I know that's the next generation P2 car.
There are a lot of very, very bright, dedicated Ligier people here that we have access to if we need. Okay. And they make themselves available. They've been extremely available, whether it's, you know, weekly conference calls, Zoom meetings, etc. So
we need to gear up for the next generation of LMP2. So this has multiple advantages for Ligier and for the team as we look towards that new era of LMP2. Yeah, it's the best opportunity. I mean, that's why we're very grateful to do this together with Sean and Lance. Again, it's a challenge for all of us, but we're not afraid of that. Having this car running gives us lots of information on the tire, on tracks that have been resurfaced since it last ran. These are very important as we build simulation models. We bring our engineering staff up to speed. You know, Ligier is a very different group than it was 5 years ago when we launched a lot of these programs. You can see if you walk around the Lamborghini, the chassis is quite different, as it is for everybody. So not everything necessarily just plug and plays to the new car. That's a good thing, right? We found some advantages and some improvements, which we certainly needed to. But everything helps build up your staff and your resources to support this new program coming on board. And of course, it's not all about the new program. We want to win some races this year and see Lance have a good time up on the podium for sure.
But I would say that it's not lost on Ligier that if they plan to sell P2 cars for 2026, it's imperative that we're successful.
You know, if we got 10 orders tomorrow, it might be a little bit challenging, but we would try to take it on. We have had some teams poke around, do the driver fitment. The cockpit was designed more for the gentleman driver. At the time, that was something we really wanted to focus on, having room around the shoulders and the hip area so they were comfortable in the car. And we do know it's very good in that aspect. So we have had some people poking around saying, I've heard it's quite comfortable to drive, and the extra downforce the car does have also makes it very nice for the gentleman driver as well. It's a little bit more comfortable sending it into those high-speed corners. So we get the occasional inquiry, and we are pursuing where we can. But definitely our big focus right now is with Sean's group and Lance.
And success can be defined in a variety of ways. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean we start sweeping podiums and things, but you know, we all define success by different metrics. And if I didn't believe we'd be successful, I got plenty of shit to do. I wouldn't be doing this. So.
So as we look over Lanky Corner here at Sebring, I know some people will call it the hairpin. I think we should call it Lanky Corner for Lanky Turtle, because let's be honest, I don't think there's a man alive, and that includes, you know, Bob Aiken and Derek Bell and any of the amazing, you know, Tom Christensen. I don't think there's a man alive who has spent more time in this corner than Lanky Turtle. But regardless of that shout out, there's a couple of shout outs I want to give, or at least some things to look for later on this weekend from an IMSA perspective. Cadillac is unbeaten here in the last 3 years, unless you count the World Endurance Championship, in which case they are beaten, but at least in the 12 Hours of Sebring, Cadillac hasn't been beaten. So can any manufacturer knock Cadillac off of the top of the boards? In GT, can anyone beat Lexus? You know, in the BOP era, you don't want to show speed too early. And if you're Lexus, did you show speed too early? With both cars, regardless of their classification in GTD, at the top of the time charts consistently. Of course, since we last covered IMSA, there's been a couple new GT cars as well from Chevrolet and Ford. We'll continue the Ford story tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to seeing my first race with the Ford Mustangs competing. 2 cars on the factory side and then 1 entered by Proton. And then, of course, a big story that you heard mentioned in our Ligier story is the fact that the Ligier Lamborghini GTP entry is making its first race here in the States. Of course, it also debuted in Qatar a couple of weeks ago for the World Endurance Championship. It debuted on a very smooth European-style racing circuit. This is anything but. So I would not expect that the Lamborghini is going to necessarily have a great debut, but that's kind of typical for new cars, especially coming into a formula where all of the other manufacturers have time, testing, and race miles underneath their belt. For Lamborghini, I think the big thing in their first race is just get to the finish. Fun. That's what I can say about Sebring and the 12 Hours. It's been great to be back in the sports car paddock. Everybody's so happy. It just fills me with joy. It's been a lot of fun, and I think there's a lot more fun to come this weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video.